Bah, like one of these days, I'm gonna figure out why this camera's never lined up, and I have to keep changing it. And when I change it back, it never goes back the right way. Everything is broken. To be fair, that's probably my fault somehow. But that aside, you would think that somebody would get you some software that could line the camera up for you. Conceptually, I can figure out how to. Might try it with the AI. Coding AIs, by the way, are terrible and don't know how to code. I don't know if you know that, but there's simple tests that you can run that suppose you actually knew some programming languages instead of, I'm a programmer, I know Java. You could run a test real quick and find out that coding AIs can't actually code anything. They don't understand basic software engineering principles. That should be a hint. Oh, AIs are going to replace your job. Okay. If you're such a terrible coder that AI is better, please go work at McDonald's. Start with, would you like fries with that? If you can handle that for a while, maybe we'll put you up the ladder. But a lot of these problems, and I just listened to an hour of Carl Benjamin from a couple of weeks ago. Granted, I don't know how I missed it, but I missed lots of things. There's way too much going on. Flood of information. Whining about his country and sort of very slowly coming to the conclusion that democracy doesn't work. But the Greeks told you that. I read all these books. Did you? Are you sure? And it's the same in software, right? Like, well, I took a boot camp course where I wrote and I was thinking about it. I think about this a lot. I used to, and still occasionally do actually, type code in from a piece of paper in a book onto my computer, which is granted prone to error because although I'm really good at typing, I ain't perfect. I need to get this right. And this is all automatic, pretty much. And to be fair, lighting and sound are actually impossible and can't ever be done. So if you see it done, just call it a miracle and move on with your life. Software didn't used to be that way, but now working software, I feel like it's magic. This thing, I don't know what happened. I found a better watch face that I liked for the stupid thing, and ever since then, it just shuts off. There's no warning of low battery. There's no battery level on this watch face, which I'm quite okay with because I didn't think I needed it. And now I'm like, maybe I need to find a different watch face. I'm going to write my own watch face for this thing because none of the notifications work. I don't know what the battery level is, and so I can't be proactive about it. And I don't always notice when it shuts off. So, like, everything in software is like that. Because no one knows how to code. Because half of them are H1b visa people. And the thing is, I guess this is what nobody really kind of understands. Let's go crazy. Let's say that Elon Musk has an IQ of 10 trillion. Just to throw wild, crazy numbers. The problem is, every stupid person in India would still be smarter. It's called distributed cognition. You can look that stuff up if you really want to know more about that. I talk more about that on navigating patterns. But I don't think he's accounting for that. Like, it doesn't, this system the smart person builds is never smarter than the sum total cognition below. This is why tyrannies don't work. And so people, quote, getting into software to leave their country, as discussed in my last video, there doesn't matter what system you put in place. The question is, how hard is it? Because if it's hard enough, they'll give up. And if it's hard enough, only the smartest people will get through. If you set up arbitrary rules, like, well, they have to have a degree in computer science, then the schools in India are going to print degrees in computer science to meet demand. Right. And the thing about computers is, well, programming isn't hard, I guess. I mean, if AI can do it, it's not hard. That's for sure. Um, then what are we doing? But if programming is hard, and it used to be hard for lots of very good reasons, then we'll have better software and everything will work. And we'll have a problem. We'll have a supply of smart people problem. Okay. How many email clients do we need to have in the world? How many browsers? I'm not saying one for each. I'm saying we haven't even asked the question. If you let wicked smart guy go off and build his own browser, he's not working for some other project. And his browser's going to suck, and no one's going to know that it exists. Opera may be a better browser than freaking Brave and Chrome, and I have no idea. I'm at the limit of browsers. And I've used Opera in the past and then ditched it and used it and ditched it. Usually because there's a bug and it does something horrible. And I'm like, all right, I can't deal with this. Unlike the bugs in Firefox, which are also horrible and regularly put me in a position where I'm like, hey, I can't deal with this anymore. They shut off a Firefox feature, and now when I close it, it doesn't open back all the windows. I have a plugin that gets around this, but just one day it stopped doing it. And I was like, what? I rebooted my machine. Windows magically restarted all my apps, or at least a bunch of them. And I was like, oh, wow, this is cool. Windows fixed that. And now it doesn't work again. And I'm just like, I was better off when I did it manually. Didn't take that much time anyway, because I had plugins and methods and ways to do all this. But software is such a mess. And we have a flood of engineers. And we have a flood of software. There's just too much software. There's too much. And all of it relies on the same, 24 libraries or something that everyone's using. And they're all broken. And no one's fixing them. And Google's sucking up all the talent and saying, hey, you know what? You can have your personal freedom and do what you want 25% of the time. No, dude, why don't you work hard on things that matter instead of your personal pet projects, most of which are never going to get seen by anybody? And we're still not paying attention to the freaking numbers. The law of large numbers can work against you. Make a visa system to let hundreds of thousands of people in a country, or millions, and somebody of those billions of people that want to get in here. There's 1.5 billion people in India. It's like, that's more than 4. Who knew? They're going to figure it out. They're going to find a loophole. They're going to exploit the thing. And you're going to get a flood of professionals of whatever nature. And eventually somebody on the other side is going to figure out, well, these people all just want to come here. And I need cheap labor. I mean, that's definitely happening, right? Like, all of the critiques that people are giving of things like h1b and illegal immigration and legal immigration and migrant visas, because those are separate, and all kinds of other things are valid. But you can't fix them. So Carl Benjamin's going on for an hour. Oh, this percentage of the British public is this, and this percentage of the British public is this, and this percentage of the British is this. And I'm like, how many political positions actually exist in the world? Because I don't think it's 6. I think it's like 3. But hey, I'm open to 5. I think that's where Plato landed on it in the Republic anyway. But like, a lot of these positions, as he pointed out, are contradictory. They're liberal Democrat, but they don't believe in liberalism. So the label's wrong. And instead of coming to the conclusion that maybe this label is wrong, right, because it doesn't match to people who, quote, identify with it. Then maybe we shouldn't use the label. Like, maybe we should find a way. And what's wrong with the government? The government's flooded with midwits who don't know how to run a government. So your ideological stance is actually completely irrelevant if you're incompetent. Right? Like, if your stance is C is the greatest computing language of all time, which of course it is, and everybody knows this, and if you don't know this, you're dumb and wrong about everything, because I said so, and it's my channel. But they can't code C, but they want to code C. Like, what do you do with those people? Because in Java land, that's everywhere. And now that we've done away with the specialties, like network engineers and systems engineers, and like it's all over. Like, software engineers can't do it. They weren't even trained for all that. Number of software engineers that understand anything about, say, systems engineering is embarrassingly low. I keep looking on my phone and I got like Google Newsfeed thing, and they're like the top 5 Linux commands you need to know. And I'm reading it and I'm like, are you telling me that there are people in the computer industry that are already in the industry doing work who don't already know these Linux commands? Like grep. I'm like, okay. So we have a flood of unprepared, uninformed workers who can't do the work? Like, I don't understand. And in the same way that we've tried to divide up political labels and squished them back together in some cases, liberal, Democrat, I got a feeling it's already an impossible situation, by the way. Liberal from what? Mob rule? Democracy is mob rule. We're really not understanding what a software engineer is. What set of baseline skills and talent and ability level you need to be called that? I know Java. What does that mean? Do you know object-oriented programming or aspect-oriented programming, or any number of other programming methods Java supports? And how many of those do you know? Because that would be important. When I used to work with Java teams in particular, because they're the worst, right? All Java software runs in containers. Containers are not new, they're quite old. I think 90s or something, like mid 90s or something, right? Spark is what caused containers to be a thing. High core count, high density chips. That was Sun Microsystems. That wasn't Intel. Intel makes the worst chips. They're so far behind, or they were, now that everyone else is out of business. That's one way to win a race. And they didn't understand, oh, we're going to put more memory in the computer. And I'm like, but if you don't increase the container memory, you can't access it. And no, it'll be fine. Once we put it in the computer, it'll be recognized in Java. I'm like, no, it literally cannot happen that way. It actually cannot. Every time. And then, of course, they'd get their memory and their software would get slower. And I'm like, well, listen, if you can't garbage collect 2 gigs, and it's always gigs, right? It's always gigabytes and gigabytes of data with Java, because it just Java loves to duplicate data. You probably can't manage 4 gigs. And if you do manage 4 gigs, because it was well known amongst, maybe this has changed because Java's updated, but it was well known among pretty much everybody who wasn't a programmer and actually knew how this stuff worked, although I was also a programmer, that like you get above 2 gigs in like Tomcat or Jetty and you're cooked. With there are a few exceptions to that, sure. If you're very careful with data management, it doesn't get slower. But like, no one's careful with their data management. They're quote Java programmers, and I argued back then for years, like, Java programmer is a non-existent category. Java's barely well, first of all, it's not a programming language. Like, it just isn't. It was designed for embedded systems, which is ironic because it's a freaking memory hawk. I'm like, well, that was a failed project at Sun. Lab leak, the poison's everywhere. Quick, ship it out as a product. Horrible software. Horrible. Everything about the Java infrastructure was just terrible. Absolutely terrible. And it runs all kinds of stuff, especially at banks. And they're like, we don't know why we keep having security problems. Really? You couldn't figure that one out, huh? Let me tell you how this works. Java is a security problem waiting to be found. Oh my goodness. Equifax. I knew somebody who worked at Equifax right after they got broken into years ago. Not that many years ago, but years ago. And he told me how they broke in, and I was just like, that was avoidable. And then while he was there, the development team was so insistent on, we need to do these fast releases. It needs to work this way. We need to poke these holes in the firewall. That he's like, no, they'll be back there in a couple of years. Because they didn't learn their lesson. They don't understand how it works. And they're letting the dev team run everything. Well, you're going to get a security problem. Cybersecurity wasn't even around years ago, except in the military, right? But like outside the military, cybersecurity didn't exist. Why do we need it now again? Oh, that's right, because we don't do architecture. And we let software engineers run everything because we think that's what Netflix did, which is not what Netflix did. I should do a video on navigating patterns and how Netflix destroyed absolutely everything. I mean, they just ruined everything. They ruined software engineering. They ruined media as such. They just wrecked everything. Cursed us with microservices everywhere. Ugh, it's just horrible. Like, microservices can be useful in a mixed architecture, sure, but also that they don't run microservices the way you think they do. You implement. I used to go to places all the time. They'd be like, "We're gonna run a fully microservices architecture," and I'd be like, "How are you gonna do that?" And they're like, "Well, we're gonna start coding it, and then we'll work it out." And I'm like, "Good luck." Let me know when that doesn't work out. And it's insane. And most of it's just a flood with too many people in the software industry. Way too many. Way too many. Probably cut 2/3 of them out. Software would improve. Oh, that's not true. They did it at Twitter. Twitter's still wackily broken. Twitter has so many little bugs. And I'm just like, dude. I mean, you definitely made it better. But also, could you fix the bugs too? I mean, it's faster, it's cleaner, it's a lot more consistent. But like, you get some UI bugs, you get some, there's all kinds of bugs. Just fix the bugs. That's all. Just fix the damn bugs. Oh, do you even have a way to report bugs? When was the last time you engaged with a software company that had a way to report bugs? And then the ones that do, you report the bug, nothing happens. You check with them, they don't have a ticket open. Everything's broken. Why? let so many people in, and not just software engineers, that now the people we have can't even ask if you would like fries with that reliably, or open a ticket in a help desk system based on an automated system that should have done that for you. You know how many companies I worked for that I walked in as a consultant, and then they'd be like, "Oh, we have this problem or whatever," and I start to dig in, and maybe I'd help them with their help desk while I was at it, because I was like, "Well, I don't understand why you're getting bugs and that your customers are finding, and you don't even know about them." And it just turns out like there's a clog in a queue somewhere that nobody noticed. And I'm like, did you think you weren't busy because your software was running smoothly and your customers were all happy? Or worse yet, you would grab 1 out of 5 tickets randomly out of the thing and clog them up, and no one noticed. It's extremely common in the industry. And those weren't, it's not like, oh, that's what you were there to fix. No, that wasn't what I was there to fix at all. I primarily work with software teams. I didn't care about the ticketing system. It just came up in the course of analysis. Because when I do an analysis, I do an analysis. It's like, I like to research. It's a lot of fun. So I'll figure out how your whole freaking industry works. Like I love, you want to learn a lot of industries? Go do computer consulting, because everyone's got computers, right? And everybody needs computer consulting work. And like, learned pharma, learned a bunch of banking, right? Financial institution stuff, insurance companies, banks, all kinds of stuff. Learned a bunch about manufacturing industries, because I worked for a couple of manufacturing plants, because they have computers too. Who knew? And yeah, I mean, so many industries. I can't even remember them all. And so many companies. And you just see, especially in software, you see how they got 1 or 2 guys out of 300-400 software engineers that do all the work. It's the Pareto principle. It's Jordan Peterson talks about this. Taleb talks about it better. Like, read all of Nassim Taleb's books. They're fantastic. Don't look at his Twitter thread. It's half dumpster fire and half genius. But his books are great. And it's just like, we've just flooded the market. And in the same way, we flooded not only the government, the people running the government. There's Carl Benjamin on Sargon of Akkad channel, I think. I forget now. Going off on how they've got 543,000 civil servants, not the NHS. He ruled that out. One civil servant for every 127 people in Britain. That's insane. That's a flood. That's a literal flood. You have too many managers at some point. Well, we have too many software engineers. We just have too many. And just too many people. And that's terrible, because the average goes down when you add people, because most people aren't at the top. That's why it's the top. It's a mathematical certainty by definition. So you want good software? You get the bad people out, so the average software engineer is actually better. How do we filter them? Well, that's a legit problem. Same with government. And the thing is, you have a bunch of midwits in your government who don't understand things like, well, you can't actually fix the climate without taxing the people and being tyrannical about how they run their lives. Those two things aren't separable. Right? You can't be for liberty and democracy. Democracy is mob rule. And there are ways to mitigate it. I mean, that's why in the US it's a democratic republic. We're a republic. Of course, we haven't been doing the republic part recently, and things have been getting worse. Nah, couldn't be. And that's the problem of too many people in anything. Waters it down, floods it out, and makes it worse. everything in software is worse. Every aspect of it, there's some exceptions. There's always outliers. I get that. But they're outliers. Do you know how many pieces of software there are? Dude, look at how many programming languages there are. Are you insane? People always ask me, like, oh, you're going to learn Rust? And I'm like, why? Like, oh, Rust is better than Rust. I watched a video the other day. The whole argument was Rust is faster, Rust is faster, Rust is faster. And I'm like, none of these features are interesting. None of these features are things I can't add into C in a library that I carry with me. And I don't think it's any faster. I don't see how. Are you saying your assembly code is quicker than mine? I don't understand what you're saying. It's faster. How could that be? And there are some loopholes and exceptions. And yeah, there's optimizing compilers and blah, blah, blah. Why don't we just go back to C and integrate C-scope? Make it a 5-stage compiler. I read a thing on Jonathan Blow, had a thing on Twitter. I guess he's been working on his own language like since forever. And I'm like, talk to Bill Hall. He wrote Odin in like 20 minutes. Like, Odin's already up and running in less time than Jonathan Blow's language. And he's like, well, we've got LLVM in the middle of our toolchain. And I'm like, okay. And like, I couldn't really tell what he was talking about. I'm not going to put the time in to figure it out because, like, really, like, I'm tired of these people. Like, he may be a genius, but also I'm tired of these geniuses. It looked like he was trying to get, like, a 1 or 2 pass compiler build. And I'm like, no, you want more compiler phases, not fewer. It's a simple enough principle, right? Like, build object files or your equivalent of object files, right? And then go through and optimize that aspect. Build linker files and then have something analyzed and optimize that aspect, right? This is the same as looking at the same problem from different perspectives and then doing the trade-offs, right? Like, this is how, we'll say above average cognition people actually think about problems. Our compilers should do the same. And people are always like, well, Java's slow, and yeah, it's bytecode compiled, dude. It's just in time. And there's nothing wrong with JIT, and I'm a huge Python fan. Huge, love Python. But like, bro, all these things that do just in time or bytecode compile or whatever nonsense, they're all slow. Did you think maybe those two things are related? I don't know. You want to be able to code easier and not make mistakes? Why don't you let the compiler fix that? Because then we can have a few people, like 5 in the world. We should be able to get 5 really good compiler people in the world. Work on optimizations like that, so the rest of us don't have to deal with it. That would be nice. Instead of trying to solve it with the computer language of the week. What are we doing? I thought knowing 8 computer languages was cool. Now I'm like, yeah, that's like 1% of the computer languages or something. There's a zillion of these damn things, and they're all terrible. I look at them and I go, yeah, I already know what's wrong with that. Like, I can just see it. I'm like, I don't know, man. You guys need to teach CS 101 again. I mean, I didn't take it in college, but also, which books that they taught in college do you think I don't have? Wasn't that hard. It's good for me. I can learn on my own. A lot of people can't. A lot of people can't learn even if you send them to college. But we gave a bunch of them degrees, even in the US. We have a flood of software engineers. We have a flood of lots of things. We have a flood of people trying to understand politics and then voting. What do you think the problem is? I don't know. I'm stuck. I can't figure it out.